Hey team, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian, core design engineer with Brunswick Bowling, and this is part 3 of the Troublemaker core overview, where we're discussing the converter that you can find on deviatebowling.com to help make layouts as simple as possible for the Troublemaker and for all no-thumb layouts. Now, if you haven't watched part 1 and part 2 of my video series, I highly recommend that you do that. Part 1 is going to detail the core and cover information for the Dualistic core and the new HK22 cover base that's on the Troublemaker Pearl. It gives you some insight as to why the Troublemaker core is designed, why it's designed. And in part 2, we talked about specific layouts, the post-drilled numbers, what they do to the ball motion, and what you should do to select that ball motion. Now we're going to put a nice bow on things with part 3 here, where we're going to talk about how you actually go about using the dot to center of grip distance guide that's available to you as a PDF online, and put all this information into the layout converter to make sure that we get the proper layout that we're looking for. All of this can seem a little daunting on the surface, but I promise as soon as you know what you're looking at and familiarize yourself with this layout converter, it's going to be a tool that you'll want to go back to time and time again. I'll let you in on a little bit of a secret. This layout converter works for any symmetrical ball. It does not have to be the Troublemaker. It does not have to be the Dualistic core. The trends for all of these layouts, especially the dot to center of grip distance that you choose, are going to be the same for every symmetrical ball. The only difference here is that you're going to get a wider range of post-drilled numbers and post-drilled options thanks to the Dualistic core, so you can cover a much wider spectrum of ball motion by drilling a Troublemaker. But this dual angle converter is going to allow you to put layouts on any ball that you choose as long as it's symmetric. And I'll get you a little bit of detail about what to do with an asymmetric ball at the end of the video. But the Troublemaker is symmetric, so we're going to focus here on symmetrical balls. There are two key components to laying out a ball for no thumb. It is the pin to PAP, or the dot to PAP, which everyone is used to. That's the same for every layout. And it's the dot to the center of grip. Now, there are other systems out there that take this into account, but their systems don't scale in a way that we feel like is as consistent as the Troublemaker system. So we're going to recommend the Troublemaker system for all symmetrical balls across the board going forward. And for now, we have this handy converter on Deviate Bowling's website to walk us through it. And it's super simple. The first thing you need is the bowler's PAP. You need that for every layout system, whether it be dual angle, PAL, 2LS, doesn't matter. You're always going to need the bowler's PAP because the distance from the pin or the dot to the PAP is a critical distance. And as a reminder, the center of grip for all no-thumb bowlers is always going to be the center of the bridge. You're not measuring from an arbitrary point away from the finger holes or a line that the fingers touch. It's always going to be the dead center of the finger grips, the dead center of the bridge. That is the center of grip for no-thumb bowlers. All of the example layouts for Troublemaker were drilled using a 5 straight over PAP. That is 5 over by 0 up down. So that's what we're going to use for demonstration purposes to show you the variety of layouts that you can achieve, and then I'll show you what things look like if we use those same layouts with a slightly different PAP. Maybe a shorter up, maybe a shorter over and a taller up, and a longer over and a down coordinate, because those are kind of the two common PAPs that we see with no-thumb bowlers. But for now, we're going to start with 5 over 0 up down, and we're going to do this in real time. So we're going to go to deviatebowling.com. We're going to click on the Troublemaker Pearl on the front page, or if you're coming back to this at a later time, you can always go to the drop-down menu to Products, and then select balls, and then select the ball that you're looking for. In this case, Troublemaker or Troublemaker Pearl both have a link to this information. From the Troublemaker Pearl landing page, we're going to grab the dot to center of grip distance locator, and all of that information is detailed in the previous video, so if you're unfamiliar with the dot to COG distance guide, go ahead and check out part 2 of my video series. And the other thing we're going to download is the no thumb to dual angle converter. This should open for you in Excel on Mac or PC, and there are some minor formatting issues that we've run into on various platforms with tablets and cell phones, but for the most part, as long as you have some version of OpenOffice, they should work for you no problem. If you have any formatting issues, you can contact me directly, and I'll be happy to help work through that with you. When you open it up, this is what you see. It's just a simple Excel sheet where you've got inputs. The inputs are going to be in a gold or an orange color depending on the format of your Excel sheet, and it's going to have some white outputs as well. The outputs you do not have to worry about. They are just there as guides. We're going to walk through this one step at a time, so although it looks daunting, it's actually pretty simple. You're just going to follow this from the top down, starting with the first instruction to input the bowler's PAP. In our case, it's going to be 5 over. Now, the vertical coordinate in the next box is going to be 0 up down. So I'm going to put 0 here. Now, just as a reminder, it is incredibly critical that you use a negative sign if you're dealing with a down coordinate. So for example, if this bowler was a 5 over by -2 or a 5 over by 2 down, I would simply type -2, and that's going to change our distance from the PAP back to the center of grip. The next thing that you'll see listed, we're not going to worry too much about. It's simply calculating the distance from the center of grip back to the PAP. That's the straight line distance, or in other words, the third leg of the triangle, or the hypotenuse of the triangle, to throw a math term at you. That's something that's important because some layouts don't perfectly work if your distances in the next step aren't correct. But for now, just know that we're just drawing a triangle. The next input that you're going to give the converter is the pin to center of grip, or in our case, dot to center of grip distance. Now this is where our dot to center of grip distance guide, that's the PDF that you downloaded, is going to come in handy. All of the detail on the information about what each of these distances do is detailed in part 2. So make sure that you check out the video part 2 of this series so that you know what you're looking for here. So we're just going to make sure that our 5 over by 0 up down is correct, and then we're going to pick a drop down menu. Let's do a benchmark 3.5 inches dot to center of grip. And then the final thing that you're going to tell the program, the final thing that you have to select is the pin to PAP, in our case the dot to PAP. That's going to be, let's make it a nice even 5 inches. If you hit enter, that's going to take you to the top of the input box, but that's okay because that's a way of knowing that all of our inputs have been recognized. If we scroll down to the bottom here, we're going to find our dual angle layout output. That's the bottom 3 boxes. That is the dual angle layout that you're going to apply to the ball. In other words, in this case, if you use a drilling angle of 79 degrees, a 5-inch pin to PAP, and a 39-degree VAL angle, that is going to give you a layout that puts the pin 5 inches from the PAP and the center of grip exactly 3.5 inches dot to center of grip. Now you'll notice that these dual angles are very specific. Sometimes you're going to get high numbers for the drilling angle, like 120 for example, and that's okay. All we're doing here is we're making sure that whatever the input PAP coordinate is, and whatever the desired pin to center of grip distance and pin to PAP distance are, that is the exact value that you get when you apply it in dual angles. So the dual angles are going to be very specific, and in some cases they're going to look a little funny, but trust your gut. If you get big drilling angles, or if you get very specific numbers like 79 and 39, those are the correct numbers that you're going to use with your quarter scale to get the distance at exactly 3.5 inches and 5 inches in our case. Now the reason we had to do a converter is because there are some very unique bowler PAPs out there, especially with no thumb in the ball. It allows the PAP to walk around depending upon your player's style. So there are players, for example, that have a 3-inch horizontal coordinate and a, let's say, 2-inch vertical coordinate. So that's 3 over by 2 up. So for this player, the exact same inputs, 3.5 inches dot to center of grip and a 5-inch pin to PAP, results in a dual angle of 52 by 5 by 66. You'll notice that's drastically different than the 79 by 5 by 39 that we just had with the other PAP. Now another example of this, some players have a very long over coordinate and a very down coordinate. Someone like Justin Bone has a 6 over by 2 inches down PAP. In this case, this layout that we selected is going to give you a 100-degree drilling angle, and that angle is so big just because his PAP is so far over, we need a big angle to get back toward the center of grip. The same 5-inch pin to PAP that all of these have had, and a 39-degree VAL angle. So you can see that this converter works well for any player style. It takes only one extra step. You already have to know the bowler's PAP to do any dual angle layouts. So just adding the center of grip distance and inputting the PAP is the only extra step you need. The resulting dual angles are displayed right there on the screen for you, and you can apply them directly to the ball. There's no need for swing arcs, there's no need for complicated 8-step processes, and there's no need for conversion tables. Everything is right here in front of you. All you have to do is give the program the proper inputs, aka what are the bowler stats, and what is the desired pin to PAP distance and pin to center of grip distance, and there you go. Dual angles right there that you can draw on the ball. When you get familiar with this program, you can probably do it in about 30 seconds. Now there are some cases where you'll get incompatible layouts, and I'll give you an example of that right now. Using this kind of extreme PAP of 6 over but 2 down, because the PAP is so far over and so far down relative to the center of grip, you're going to need relatively long pin to COG distances and pin to PAP distances in order to reconnect the layout to make it compatible. So for example, if we still want to use our same 5-inch pin to PAP, but we want the dot to be 1 inch from the center of grip of the fingers, well, that's not actually possible because the sum of the two numbers that you've chosen, 1 inch plus 5 inches equals 6 inches. If you look at the COG to PAP distance of 1/6 and 1/8, you'll notice that our layout sum of 6, well, that value is less. So those two values don't actually intersect. You can't actually make a dual angle layout out of these two because they're not long enough to connect. So what you'll see as an output is an error where you get the num error in place of your dual angles. And that's okay. All you have to do is adjust the layout to get a number that is compatible. You notice when I went to 1.5 inches for this pin to PAP, then we got a layout sum that's 6.5 inches. That's greater than the hypotenuse of our triangle. That means that we are able to connect all 3 lines of the dual angle on the ball, and that means that the layout is possible. This 134-degree drilling angle sounds daunting, but it actually works out just fine if you map it on the ball. What it's going to do is place the CG in line between the center of grip and the dot. The only other type of error that you might come across when you're working with this dual angle converter is the type where you get the pin way past the VAL. And we left the VAL in this system on purpose, both because people are very familiar with the dual angle system and because it makes a nice right angle to the center of grip, and you can orient the fingers in the right location to make sure that your PAP is exactly where you expect it to be as a no-thumb bowler. Now there's only one more type of error that you might encounter when you're working with this program, and it is for bowlers with short over coordinates and tall vertical coordinates, bowlers that spin it off their hand a little bit. An example that I used earlier is 3 over and 2 up. In this example, it's easy when you use extremely aggressive layouts to get the pin or the dot past the VAL on the wrong side. In that case, you'll have a negative VAL angle, and that's no good. Technically, you could apply this layout to the ball and make it work, but we at Brunswick don't think it's flare safe, and we don't think it's necessarily a good idea to apply these layouts. So let's look at an example, and I'll show you how to adjust to correct it. So in this case, we have a short over and a tall up coordinate. We've got a pin to center of grip distance of 6 inches. That's very extreme. We're trying to get the fingers away from the dot as far as possible for an incredibly aggressive layout. And we used maximum flare pin to PAP of 3.5 inches. In this case, the drilling angle's fine, 38. 3.5-inch pin to PAP is what we suggested, but you'll notice that this VAL angle is 6 degrees to the wrong side of the VAL. And that's not, again, necessarily a problem, but that will cause overflaring or even reverse flaring in some rare instances. So we just recommend against it just to keep everyone in a safe and happy, comfortable location in terms of flare potential. All you have to do is just reduce the pin to center of grip distance a little bit until you get in a more flare safe location. So instead of 6 inches here, let's try 5.5. That gets us to an 8-degree VAL angle. Even though that's sharp, that's still on the right side of the VAL. This is a compatible layout. If we wanted to go just a little more safe with a slightly larger VAL angle, we can just reduce that value again, choose 5 inches from the center of grip instead of 6, and look, we've got a 20-degree VAL angle. That's a very standard VAL angle, no problems with this layout. I know this has been a long video series, but I hope it has been incredibly educational and informative. It's clear that the Dualistic core is not only the first of its kind, but a highly technically innovative system that you can use to maximize the potential layouts on balls for no-thumb players. If you're a no-thumb player, I hope you're trying out this core with various layouts to test the boundaries of its potential. You'll be surprised at how much difference in flare spacing you get by varying the difference from the pin to the center of grip. And if you're a Pro Shop operator, you can apply this logic not only to the Troublemaker series, but to all symmetrical balls. One last thing that I'll mention is that the Troublemaker layout technically does also work for asymmetric balls, with one caveat. The VAL angle, the second angle in the dual angle system, and the pin to PAP position are going to be the exact same with the given inputs. The only difference is you now have the freedom to choose the drilling angle, or the first angle in the dual angle layout system, that you want. The system that we've got right now currently locks the CG to the center of grip. So no matter what you do with the dual angle converter inputs, the output drilling angle is always gonna be pointing at the center of grip, for example. So all you have to do is just choose your own drilling angle, first angle, and you can change the ball motion by swinging the mass bias on an asymmetrical ball. So the angle that it's going to output is going to be the longest angle that we suggest. If you want the ball to rev up earlier in the mid lane, you simply reduce the angle that was output to get the desired motion. That's all the information I have on the Dualistic core in the Troublemaker and the Troublemaker Pearl. Look for more innovation from the core team in the Brands of Brunswick as the year 2024 unfolds. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook page, Bowling Buckosh, where I'll be making new videos on new information as we develop new cores for the 7 Brands of Brunswick. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.